Portrait of a Fangirl is a web series created by Temple of Geek. At the core of the project is the importance of telling the stories of women who have found inspiration, growth, and power through fandom. Hi, I'm Jenna, and I'm here today with Fryn, aka Odd Thicket, on social media. How are you today?
I am doing fantastic.
Doing fantastic. First off, do you want to tell people a little bit about yourself and a little about what you do?
Hi, I'm Odd Thicket. I'm also known as Fryn. I'm a SoCal cosplayer. That, for those of you who are from other parts of the world, it's Southern California. I have been cosplaying since around 2011 or so, and I am kind of like the de facto leader of a group of Bungo Stray Dogs cosplayers in the local LA region called the Dead Authors Club. I've also been getting into cosplay photography, so I have all my fingers in all the pies.
Were you a cosplayer first or photographer first?
I was a cosplayer first.
And how did you start to get into photography?
So I got into photography within the last year more seriously. Like I actually got like proper gear and stuff. But like ever since my first con, which was AX 2013, I would take pictures, just like haul pictures of like people, and like I would see people and I would take pictures of them and I would think it'd be cool because I make all of my cosplays. I actually don't buy a lot of stuff.
Oh, wow.
So sometimes like I'll look at someone in the hall, I'm like, oh hey, that's cool. Like I want a picture. And I get really excited about it. And as time has gone on, technology has gotten better. Like I've gone from your little point and shoot camera to a cell phone camera, and then I got like a Pixel at some point. And then I started getting really dissatisfied with computational photography. And at that point I drew the line. I'm like, we're not doing this anymore.
I don't know like anything beyond pulling up the camera on my iPhone, so I can't even imagine all the specifics that go into it.
I tend to have like a very different kind of theory about like photography compared to like other cosplay photographers, because a lot of cosplay photographers I do know come into it like photography first. Either that's their professional job or that's like their usual hobby. And so they have a very different way of interacting with cosplayers. They have to learn a whole new language of stuff to be able to exist in the con space sometimes. I've learned photography, like the theory of it, from like vintage photography. All of my gear is actually like vintage gear. Like I do manual focusing. All of my lenses are from like 1970 X.
When you hear the term fangirl, what is the first thing that comes to your mind?
I always think of that 14-year-old girl like losing their mind, like Justin Bieber stan. Nowadays, I think of it more as the verb more than the noun. And that's usually how I hear it more than anything else.
In relation to being excited over something, right?
Oh, yeah. And it's not gendered as well. Anyone can do the action of fangirling. Like there's so many depths and layers to that. Until you get there, the definition won't quite change.
Until you get involved in these little niche parts of the fandom, I agree. I didn't know as much until I started to get into cosplay, and then you see this devotion and this love for all things fandom related, and it's really amazing, actually.
I have to give so many props to like Adam Savage when he did that tech talk about like his love of cosplay coming into it. And I think that definitely started changing a lot of the conversation that I saw, at least online, around like fandom spaces, cosplay, just the kind of passion that you have for like fictional or just other media.
I love Parks and Rec. I'm a huge fan of Parks and Rec. And there's this one episode where Ben says that he's writing his Star Trek fanfic, but like they didn't make fun of him. It was kind of cool because that's the first time I remember seeing something fangirly, nerdy being normalized. I think it's important, and especially you do cosplay, you do photography, and seeing things that you love so much just embraced must be really nice.
Oh, yeah.
How has being a photographer really allowed you to express your inner fangirl?
It's actually the other way around. The main reason why I got into photography isn't necessarily for myself. I don't know if I should just go back, because I think it's kind of important that you know where I'm coming from. Yeah. It's a funny story, how I started getting into just fandom. I know growing up, I was more into like sci-fi. Like I was a huge fan of Doctor Who. Like classic, like science fiction, fantasy, supernatural detective stories, all that stuff. And then around 2011 was when we finally had internet in our house. It took a very long time. And around that time, I discovered online video streaming. I was a huge fan of like Yu-Gi-Oh! Growing up. And I always thought it was like an American cartoon. And I was like, you know what? We have this like new streaming thing. What happens if I look it up? Maybe I can watch it from the beginning. I looked it up and I started watching it. The problem is that it was subtitled. In my household, we speak Spanish primarily. A lot of the films and the things that we watch, like I'm used to seeing subtitles on everything. I'm automatically like my switch. I was like, oh, what am I doing? Like I can understand English. Why am I looking at subtitles? I'm gonna turn it off. I turn off the subtitles or I pop them up and it says Japanese. And I check and I'm like, wait, Japanese? Hold on, wait a second. If this is Japanese, this makes this anime. But if this series, I think it was like the 5Ds, if Yu-Gi-Oh! 5Ds is anime, that means the original Yu-Gi-Oh! Is anime. But then what about like One Piece, another show that I loved? Looks it up. Japanese, anime. Shaman King, Japanese, anime. Magical Doremi, Japanese anime, and I just go through all of my favorite things. I'm like, my entire fandom, like the things that I love growing up, is my entire existence is a lie. I've always been an anime fan, and I just never knew
You
it.
never realized,
I
yeah.
never realized. And in that same week, I was new to Google, and I was like, hey, it would be so funny to see these crazy Yu-Gi-Oh! Hairstyles come to life. Goes on to DeviantArt at the time. And then whose profile I come up to is Melinda Chan. And like as time goes on, I'm just like, wait, what is this? Like this person looks like they just grabbed that character and just pulled them out of the screen. Like I didn't know that was possible. So like that started my descent slowly but surely into like the cosplay world and making things and whatnot, because I've always been a very crafty person. Many years later, I know I've been at cons a lot. Like I take a lot of pride in my work because it takes a long time to like source things, to make things, to figure out how to do things. And, you know, I would take pictures of people and sometimes like I know I've had it where, you know, you're walking around con, like I'm not a small person. Like I'm not, at least don't think I'm necessarily like traditionally like attractive person. Like I'm pretty short, like I'm not very skinny. I'm just not that thing. And so like you walk around the con floor and like a lot of photographers would go to, you know, like the busty women with like the very scantily clad. Even afterward, like you would look up pictures of people from con and it's like you mostly see like that kind of like supermodel-esque images coming out, but you don't see the other me's, the other people who aren't that. So little by little, I just decided like, hey, I'm just gonna take pictures of whoever I see like on there, because I've met people who like they'll go basically their entire cosplay career and never get asked for a picture. And like I'm not saying you need pictures, like you never need that. Like
No.
if you cosplay it, like do it for you out of like your own passion for the character, passion for the craft, like all that stuff. But like there's still a little bit of validation in there.
It feels nice, yeah. Like
yeah,
you're like you're seen kind of. Oh, somebody actually like
someone appreciates me, like
exactly your
someone
hard work.
took
Yes,
the time. Yeah, so as much as possible, like I try to create those moments whenever I see it. So it's more of a like, I see you, I adore what you're doing, please don't stop, like keep going. There's been some people, it's like, you know, like if no one noticed me or anything, like I would probably stop.
right,
And you know that's so sad.
right.
You know?
Because I'm sure so many people have so much talent and creativity to offer, and it is a shame if that goes to waste.
I know with especially like my general policy when it comes to photography, there's a lot of things that like etiquette wise that aren't always taught or like people don't talk about. Let's say I see you like in the hallway. I'm like, hey, hi, do you mind if I take a picture? And then in that moment, I only shoot because of my limitations of my lenses and whatnot. I tend to shoot with natural light or like ambient light. Like I don't have any lights. I don't have a speed light. I don't have any reflectors. So like really like we're going like full vintage basically. That's why like the vintage camera theory like really applies to me, because like I just don't travel around with that much equipment. But like I look at the scene, I look at where the light is. I'm like, hey, can you like stand here? A lot of people, first time cosplayers, or you know, even if like you haven't done too many photo shoots, you don't know how to pose. Like that's a very important part of it. What I want you to do, don't stand near the wall, come over here, turn this way. The best piece of advice I've ever had was, if it hurts, you're probably doing it right. Like it feels
An awkward position,
awkward.
right?
If you just stand like there, it's not gonna look well. Like you have to turn, you have to like really bend to exaggerate. And the more exaggerated and awkward a position feels like, it tends to look really well through the lens of the camera, just because digital images will all get flattened eventually.
Right.
So you have to really just like bend.
I would think that cosplay lends really well to that, because if you kind of embody the character, you know, you can kind of do crazy poses, and I would feel like that might lend well to positioning for photography.
Oh yeah. I mean, there's always like different kinds of styles to photography, but especially with like cosplay photography, it's like this weird blend of like fashion and like conceptual stuff. And I know at least I try to take more like portraits than like full body shots, partially due to restrictions, but partially because I just love portraits. I want to see the person like that is in that cosplay doing what they love in that moment, right?
I really like what you said about how you want people who aren't like the stereotypical model to be seen, because I think that I'm also the same way. You know, I grew up at a time where it was, you know, Britney Spears and Christina Aguilera and all those, you know, pop stars, and you never see representation of yourself. And I think it's so important to see, oh, you know what? That person's like me. That person, I could do that then. And I think in this community, it's very important.
Cosplay to me has been the biggest vehicle for me to break through a lot of preconceptions I've had in the past. I've had that thing where it's like, oh, if I'm cosplaying this character, or if someone beat me to it, it's like, I can't do it. And like, that's a barrier, right? To yourself. It's like, if you love that character, do it anyway. Like you shouldn't be held back by like your size, your weight, your height. Like if you don't have the same hair color, like that's what wigs are for. That's what tailoring is for. It's better that something fits your body and you are comfortable in what you're wearing than you being a certain size or a certain height or having to do crazy things and modifying yourself. You should be wearing the clothes should not be wearing you.
I think that's so important for people to, especially people who are just getting into sewing or you know, tailoring or cosplaying or wig styling, anything related to, you know, really these creative sort of fangirl sort of endeavors. I think that is extremely important to remember, that you should be the individual.
I mean, that's like a huge thing in like I know like the menswear fashion, especially, where like every man can have like the same suit, for example. I think that's like the more easily observable thing, right? But what separates one man wearing one suit versus another is like the tailoring, like the little details in it. And like focusing on that probably is in many ways healthier than the other way around, right?
When you go into a cosplay shoot, how do you approach it? Do you dictate kind of like, this is how I want to see the character, or do you let the cosplayer, how do you as a photographer handle that?
It tends to be more of a collaboration. Are we both interested in shooting this character? Do we both have an idea of what we want at the end? And for me, especially, like, I kind of have to know what the property is. If you're telling me about a series or a character that like I don't get, it's like I might put you in a position that like does not do that character justice, and doesn't do you justice either, right? Everything kind of has to be talked about. Like there is a lot of trust in me. People have put a lot of that in my hands, given that like they've seen the kind of work that I've done before. There is quite a bit on me to be like, okay, have I done the research? Like, what is the vibe here? Is it a high shot? Is it a low shot? Is it an action shot? Do we have to frame them in a certain way? There's like tiny little decisions that need to be made. And it's very dependent on like the location and the character.
Because you are a cosplayer yourself and you do happen to do photography, I feel like you approach it as almost you're using your sense of being a fangirl to bring it out of others, you know, show them, you look amazing. You too have embraced what you love.
When you deal with other cosplayers, it's like, sometimes like you feel a little bit like embarrassed about things. You're like, oh, I don't know how to pose. I don't know how to do things. I'm like, baby, I got you. Baby, I got you. We're gonna make you look good. Like, even if you don't think you're confident, like we're doing the Kamina thing here. It's like, it's okay. Believe in the me that believes in you.
Oh, I love that. Do you feel like embracing your inner fangirl has empowered you at all?
We're gonna get real, really real right now.
Let's get real.
I had a very fraught childhood, right? Like that's where a lot of my fandom comes from. It's funny because a lot of people get into cosplay for the escapism of it. For me, it's not that. It's the opposite. For me, the escapism is actually in the fiction. If I hadn't come into like The Doctor, for example, like that was a huge thing for me, like back in the time, I wouldn't be able to be nearly as kind as I am. If I didn't have like Harry Dresden in the Dresden Files, like I wouldn't be as like snarky and try to be as outgoing as I am now. If it wasn't for a lot of different characters I've seen through books and movies and stuff like that, it wouldn't keep me going, or it wouldn't give me solace in times, because like I've suffered through like many bouts of depression since I was like very, very young. And I'm talking like I've had dissociative panic attacks, for example, since I was 4 years old. Cosplay was a thing that actually has helped me deal with the darker depression aspects of it, right? It really does get, it's a bit of a meme where it's like, would a person with depression do this?
Yeah. Could a depressed person make this? And it's a little doll, right?
Yeah, and it's like this entire like cosplayer, like all this art or all this stuff. And like it's true, because especially when you do have mental illnesses or things like that like often keep you down or have you ruminating, or your brain tells you like you're worthless, or you're XYZ, and you have like a physical item that you can hold in your hands and you can be like, no, I made this. It took me time. It took me effort. I learned how to do these skills. I have so many other things to give, and I've learned so many more, and there's still so much there to do. It's not true. And so
and not everybody can do that. Not everybody can make those things.
Yeah, it's one of those things for me that like if I have a bad day, or if I'm having like a moment, all I have to do is like turn 2 feet, and I'm like, nah, I did that. I'm more than all of these thoughts, all of these like things. It is just like a passing emotion, right? I was also a huge perfectionist. Anyone who knows and deals with like anxiety and perfectionism knows that like it can be a very unhealthy thing, right? Especially with cosplay, you have to learn at some point. There's a moment that you have to call it.
Oh, yeah.
That's the healthiest thing that you can do. It's like, it's better to have something done than something perfect.
Right.
Like you will always be working on your projects. It's breaking all of those perfectionist things where you're like working yourself into the ground. If it wasn't for cosplay, I probably would still be driving myself into a hole. If it wasn't for me dealing with these projects and learning, it's like, no, like I can't keep doing this for my own health. Like I want to go to con, I want to have fun, I want to be able to do all these other things, and I have to learn how to not do this. I've learned how to make friends, like how to interact with people in like more personable ways. I've learned collaboration skills. There's so many other things that cosplay has brought into my life, pushed me to become a better person, a healthier person, a person that someone else can count on, and hopefully someone that can bring something to someone else. For me, like cosplay is my fuel, my motor, the thing that like keeps me going day to day. And I know I'm not the only one. There's a lot of people who they struggle. It's a daily struggle, right? But it's like, I'm having a moment, but all I have to do is just make it to the next con, make it to the next event, make it to the next gathering, and whatever gets you out of bed.
Embrace that inner fangirl. Embrace that something that moves you on.
I've thought about it. I'm like, I can't imagine not having passion for stuff. That sounds like such a dull life. Not having something that you just like lose your mind over, that you can go in with a group of people and just like screaming, yelling. You're like, oh, this thing is so cool. Like it's insignificant at the end of the day, but at the same time, like it brings you such joy. It brings you such happiness.
And it could be anything. It doesn't have to just be narrowed down to anime or cosplay or whatever. It could be literally.
It could be your bird watching. It could be like your photography. It could be like PC building. There's so many things. And if you're not passionate about anything, like I feel really sorry for you, because you really should.
Well, that was the whole idea behind this podcast, actually, was defining what it means to be a fangirl. Again, like bird watching. You could be a fangirl. You're a bird watcher. You could be a fangirl. Yeah. You love the violin and you're a musician. Like it's just about passion. Like you said.
Like I know someone that they can recognize the kind of airplane that is in the air by the sound of the engines. I think that is absolutely amazing, that you are so passionate. You know exactly like what airport it's coming from, what airport it's going to go to, like what engine, like probably what like airline it's on. Like that's amazing to me. The fact that someone can be so passionate about something like that.
And it makes you kind of realize the depth of knowledge other people have as well. Like everybody's so different and could bring so much to one another.
if you're not passionate about something, we're not going to be friends.
Yeah.
Like,
It doesn't have to be the same thing.
you just have to be passionate about something, like truly passionate. If you have that, we're going to be friends. We're going to have a good time.
Well, I really appreciate you taking the time today to talk to me and to share your story. It's been absolutely wonderful talking with you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Of course. Do you want to just drop again your social media handles for our listeners?
Absolutely. So my handle almost everywhere is Oddthicket, ODDTHICKET, on Instagram and Twitter. I have a website as well, oddthicket.com, that goes to a Pixie Set site for those of you who I've taken pictures of at con or elsewhere.
Thank you so much again. We want to thank everyone who tuned in today, and especially our guest Fryn for being with us today. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to hit us up on Instagram by using the handle Portrait of a Fangirl, or anywhere else on social media as Temple of Geek. Do you want to check out some other episodes or shows? Why don't you head over to templeofgeek.com, where you will find all sorts of content that pertains to the world of geek.